in elite tennis rankings are often a sweet lie. You look at the current standings and you see number one. You see number two. You see the familiar faces lifting the major trophies. But you do not see the hidden numbers quietly making Eala the worst nightmare for every top 10 player in the upcoming 2026 season. Let us look at a blind data comparison for just a second. Player A hits with pure aggressive power and holds a top-tier ranking that everyone respects. Player B returns heavy, serves with a precision rate that statistically breaks the opponent down over the course of a 2-hour match. Player A is a Grand Slam champion you know very well. Player B is Eala. While the entire tennis world is obsessing over the raw baseline strength of the biggest names on tour, there is a literal phantom operating in the data. She is quietly preparing to dismantle the entire established order of the WTA Tour. Coaches at the absolute highest level are starting to whisper about something they call the Eala efficacy. It is a concept that goes far beyond simply hitting the ball harder. It is about a mathematical and spatial advantage that most players do not even realize is happening to them on the court. You watch a match from the stands and you see a young player bravely holding her ground against a heavy hitter. The elite data analysts watch the exact same match and they see a perfectly executed trap closing in slow motion. The tennis world loves a familiar narrative because it is safe and predictable. But the reality is that the entire landscape of the game is shifting right underneath our feet. Why are the smartest statisticians panicking when they finally look at her hidden performance metrics? We need to look deeply at the exact things that the major sports networks have completely failed to show you. To understand why Eala is such a legitimate threat, you first have to understand the massive structural flaw in the game of those sitting at the very top. The modern WTA Tour has become absolutely addicted to raw power. Every single off-season players go to the gym to add more miles per hour to their serve and more weight to their ground strokes. Everyone is trying to out-hit everyone else. It has become a predictable baseline arms race. Players are swinging harder and faster every single year, but they are blindly falling into a massive tactical trap. When everyone plays the exact same brand of aggressive power tennis, the player who can fundamentally change the geometry of the court is the one who wins. That is exactly where Alex enters the picture. Her technical foundation was heavily built on the brutal red clay of the Rafa Nadal Academy. That specific environment does not just teach you how to hit a heavy forehand, it teaches you how to suffer. It teaches you how to construct a winning point out of absolutely nothing when your back is against the wall. But she did not just stop there. The transition from junior tennis to the professional circuit absolutely ruins so many promising careers because the incoming ball simply comes too fast to process. Eala did something incredibly different from her peers. She spent the last 2 years intentionally adapting her central nervous system to handle the sheer violence of the professional game. She is no longer just surviving the heavy pace. She is absorbing it and using it against them. Now look ahead to the 2026 tour. Biologically and technically, a female tennis player often hits a massive performance spike around this exact stage of physical maturity. Her physical endurance is finally catching up with her brilliant tactical foundation. All of that deep muscle memory from thousands of hours on Spanish clay is now perfectly merging with the elite court speed required for modern hardcourt dominance. The established superstars rely entirely on their opponents eventually breaking down under heavy fire. But what happens when the player standing across the net simply refuses to break? What happens when every single heavy topspin forehand is sent back with a different spin and a completely different trajectory? It is mentally exhausting. The top-ranked players are highly conditioned to win points in 4 strokes or less. Eala forces them to play 6 or 7 strokes just to stay alive in the rally. She drags these power hitters into deep, muddy waters where pure physical strength means absolutely nothing. You can almost see the panic and frustration building in her opponents when they finally realize their absolute best weapon is totally useless against her. We are witnessing the quiet evolution of a tennis player who was built specifically from the ground up to perfectly counter the modern power game. If you are finding this deep dive eye-opening, and you want to keep discovering the hidden truth behind the biggest shifts, in professional tennis, take a second to subscribe right now because we have so much more to uncover together today. But basic technique and physical endurance are just the surface of this massive story. What truly makes her dangerous lies in a highly specific metric that almost no one pays attention to until right now. Look closely at this specific rally at the 7-minute mark of the match. Most players facing a heavy flat strike will step back to defend, but Eala does the exact opposite. She executes what elite analysts are now calling the stealth counterpunch. This is the first layer of the revelation. We call it redirection mastery. When you are standing across the net from someone hitting a massive heavy ball, the natural human instinct is to swing harder to match their energy. You want to fight fire with fire. You want to prove you can hit just as hard. Eala does not do that. She refuses to play that ego-driven game. She takes the raw kinetic energy generated by her opponent and seamlessly redirects it down the line with minimal effort. It is like watching a master martial artist use the charging weight of an attacker completely against them. The attacker uses all their strength to strike while the master simply steps aside and guides that momentum into a solid wall. Let us look at the actual return speed data when facing a first serve over 115 miles per hour. The tour average for return depth in this specific high-stress scenario is barely past the service line. Most players are just praying they can get their racket on the ball to survive the point. Eala is consistently landing her returns within 2 feet of the baseline. She is completely suffocating the server before they even have a single second to recover their physical balance from the service motion. You can see the visible frustration creeping onto the faces of the biggest hitters on tour. They crush a massive forehand that would normally be an outright winner against 90% of the locker room. They hear the loud pop off the strings and expect the point to be over. But the ball just comes right back at them faster and flatter. She absorbs pace better than almost anyone her age. Her racket acts like a perfectly angled brick wall, placed exactly where the opponent wants to hit their best shot. Let us break down the physics of this redirection mastery. When a ball travels at over 100 miles per hour, it carries a massive amount of kinetic force. Standard defensive technique requires immense physical strength just to block that ball back over the net. But Eala uses the precise angle of her racket face to absorb and instantly deflect that energy. She alters the spin. She flattens the trajectory. She takes a high bouncing topspin shot and returns a skidding flat ball that stays incredibly low to the ground. This forces the tall power hitters to bend their knees constantly. It exhausts their legs. By the middle of the second set, those powerful opponents no longer have the explosive leg strength required to hit their absolute best shots. They are totally drained by the physical toll of constantly hitting from uncomfortable low positions. Eala stays perfectly upright and perfectly balanced while her opponent is gasping for air and struggling to find their footing. This completely shatters the rhythm of a pure power player. These top-tier athletes rely on dictating the point from the very first strike. When Eala takes away that control, they start making unforced errors out of sheer desperation and panic. They try to hit the ball closer to the lines. They go for far riskier angles than they normally would. And that is exactly the trap she wants them to fall into. She is not just passively defending the court. She is actively shrinking the court. Every single heavy shot they hit becomes a massive liability. The harder they swing, the faster the ball comes back to their feet. It is a brilliant and incredibly frustrating way to play the tennis game. You watch her move and you realize she is never rushed or out of breath. While everyone else is scrambling wildly from side to side, she is always exactly where she needs to be. Her anticipation is so sharp that she often arrives at the exact landing spot before the ball even crosses the net. She takes the ball incredibly early on the rise, stealing precious fractions of a second from the opponent. In a sport where mere milliseconds decide Grand Slam titles, taking away time is the ultimate weapon. But her ability to redirect pace and act as an impenetrable defensive wall is still just the physical side of the equation. This redirection mastery makes her a total nightmare to hit through, but that is honestly not the most terrifying part for players like Coco Gauff or Elena Rybakina. There is a much deeper secret that elite coaches absolutely do not want you to know. Eala is playing a psychological game where she is constantly 2 steps ahead of every single person she faces. She is not just hitting a yellow tennis ball over a net. She is actively hacking the central nervous system of her opponent. This is the second layer of the revelation. This is her mental pattern recognition. Tennis is fundamentally a game of deeply ingrained physical habits. Under extreme pressure, every single player reverts to their favorite, reliable patterns. They serve out wide on break point down. They hit the heavy cross-court forehand when their heart rate spikes, and they feel nervous. Eala spends the first 3 games of a match simply downloading this behavioral data. She is quietly observing. She tests them with different spins and different depths just to see how they react under high stress. Then she uses that exact information to completely destroy them in the most crucial moments of the match. Watch what happens when she faces a massive breakpoint against a top-tier ranking player. The opponent fully expects a heavy baseline exchange because that is what happens 99% of the time on the professional tour. They brace themselves for a physical war. Instead, Eala completely changes the geometry of the rally. She throws in a biting backhand slice that barely bounces off the hard court. She feathers a delicate drop shot that dies just over the net. She abruptly breaks the rhythm of the match at the exact moment the opponent needs that rhythm the most. It is completely devastating to a pure power hitter. They are expecting a fastball and she gives them a slow change-up. This requires a level of tennis intelligence that you simply cannot teach in a regular sports academy. This is pure instinct combined with absolute tactical ruthlessness. Do you think this level of psychological warfare is actually fair in modern tennis? Or do you think the power hitters need to evolve their entire game to survive this new threat? Let me know your exact thoughts down in the comments because this specific shift in strategy is dividing the entire tennis community right now. Think about the sheer panic you would feel if you were standing on that baseline. You have incredible power. You have incredible foot speed. You have major titles to your name. But you suddenly realize the person across the net knows exactly where you are going to hit the ball before you even start your swing. It is like playing a game of chess against a supercomputer that already knows your next 10 moves. She is actively mapping out the neural pathways of the player across from her. Consider the mental toll this takes on a Grand Slam champion. These elite players are used to intimidating their opponents before they even walk onto the court. They step into the stadium and expect the player across the net to shrink away from their immense power. But Eala simply smiles and begins decoding their patterns. Every single unforced error the opponent makes is another data point for Eala to store in her memory bank. She remembers how you missed that crucial backhand in the second game. She remembers that your toss drops slightly lower when you are nervous on a second serve. She builds a comprehensive mental profile of your deepest insecurities on the court. And when the score reaches 5, all in the final set, she unleashes all of that data against you. She will hit the exact shot that triggers your worst memories from the match. She will force you to play the one specific ball you have been dreading all afternoon. This is why you see top-ranked players completely fall apart mentally when they play against her. Their game does not just slowly decline, it shatters into pieces. When she anticipates a cross-court shot, she is already moving to that side of the court before the ball even leaves their racket. This forces the opponent to constantly second-guess their own natural instincts. They start doubting their absolute best weapons. A player who is doubting their own shots is a player who has already lost the match before the final point is even played. She does not need to hit 100 flashy winners to beat you. She just needs to make you believe that none of your weapons will ever work against her. She mentally breaks you down until you essentially defeat yourself out of pure exhaustion and doubt. It is a silent tactical execution on the tennis court. You can have all the raw power in the entire world. You can hit the tennis ball harder than anyone else on the planet. But what exactly do you do when your opponent has already decoded your entire game plan by the end of the very first set? You cannot outmuscle someone who refuses to give you a static target. Let me prove to you exactly how this terrifying mental domination is going to completely rewrite the record books next season. Numbers never lie. If we take the heat map of Eala and overlay it on the charts of tennis legends at 21 years old, you will see a striking similarity that no television commentator dares to mention on live broadcasts. Let us look at the empirical proof from her 3 most revealing matches in recent months. First, we examine her brutal 3-set battle against a reigning major champion on the blistering hard courts of Miami. The raw data extracted from that match is absolutely staggering. When the score was tied 4-all in the deciding set and the physical pressure was completely suffocating the stadium, Eala actually dropped her unforced error rate to literal 0. 0 mistakes under maximum physical and mental stress. She completely refused to miss a single ball. Her opponent, meanwhile, sprayed 4 wild errors into the bottom of the net, simply trying to hit through the defensive wall. The champion panicked because the court geometry suddenly felt completely wrong and alien. Then we look at her narrow loss in the late stages of a premier tournament against the hardest flat hitter on the Women's Tour. Even in defeat, the underlying performance metrics tell a terrifying story for the rest of the locker room. Eala successfully neutralized 85% of first serves traveling over 120 miles per hour. Nobody else in the current top 50 rankings is even touching a 70% neutralization rate against that specific aggressive player. Eala treated those massive explosive serves like slow-motion practice balls. Finally, we analyze her absolute masterclass upset on clay, where she systematically dismantled a highly seasoned veteran. She did this by deliberately playing high, heavy looping balls right into the specific strike zone that the veteran secretly hates the most. It was not just a tennis match to watch, it was a surgical dissection of a veteran game plan executed with chilling precision. We track a highly advanced analytic metric called pressure handling capacity. This specific metric measures exactly how a player performs on break points down and in crucial late-match tiebreaks compared to their baseline average performance. The tour average for players under 22 years old is deeply and consistently negative. Young players naturally crack under the bright stadium lights. They rush their most important shots. They lose their optimal breathing rhythm. They look at their coaches in pure panic. Eala holds a pressure handling metric that is currently sitting in the top 1 percentile of the entire professional circuit regardless of their age or their ranking. She actually plays significantly better when the stakes are highest and the margin for error is razor thin. Based on this exponential growth trajectory, the cold hard math points to an inescapable conclusion for the upcoming 2026 season. She is mathematically projected to absolutely shatter the elite ranking barrier by the middle of the summer hardcourt swing. But the actual number next to her name does not even matter anymore. The real story is the absolute destruction she is going to leave in her wake across the major tournaments. The predictive data models show she will be directly responsible for at least 3 massive early round upsets against heavy tournament favorites at the Grand Slams next year. She is the ultimate bracket buster in the making. She is the hidden landmine sitting quietly in the tournament draw that every single top seed is praying they do not have to face in the perilous first week. So does this mean the entire world order of the WTA is about to be permanently flipped upside down? The answer lies in the massive ripple effect that Eala is about to create across the entire globe. The year 2026 will not just be another normal season on the professional tour. It will be the defining year the entire sports world learns to pronounce the name Eala with a profound sense of respect and genuine fear, because the secret is finally out in the open. She is no longer just an individual tennis player trying to win shiny trophies. She has become the living, breathing symbol of a massive paradigm shift in professional tennis strategy. We are actively witnessing the death of mindless power hitting and the glorious rebirth of tactical court genius. She is proving on a global stage that you can absolutely conquer the physical giants of the game by being significantly smarter instead of just being stronger. This changes absolutely everything for the next generation of young athletes currently grinding away in development academies around the world. For decades, young players in the massive Asian market were told they simply did not have the sheer physical size or raw muscle mass to dominate the Western tennis powerhouses. Eala is actively rewriting that toxic narrative with every single tactical victory. She is giving millions of young aspiring athletes a brand new, beautiful blueprint for ultimate global success. And here's the exclusive piece of the puzzle that nobody in the mainstream sports media knows about yet. Deep inside her private training camp, they have made a massive and highly secretive structural change for the 2026 season. She recently brought in a secretive biomechanics and cognitive specialist who previously only worked with elite chess grandmasters and Olympic-level sprinters. They are not working on her forehand technique or her footwork. They are spending 4 intense hours every single day purely on visual tracking and advanced cognitive processing speed. She is literally training her eyes and her brain to see the yellow tennis ball leave the opponent racket frames several milliseconds earlier than humanly normal. The rest of the professional tour is busy lifting heavier weights in the gym, while she is actively upgrading the processing power of her own mind. The long-term implications of this specific training evolution are absolutely massive. The established superstars of the sport are now racing against a ticking clock. They have built their entire athletic empires on overwhelming physical force and intimidation. Can they completely rebuild their foundational tactical identities before they inevitably face her on the biggest stadium stages of the world? Or will they simply become the very first high-profile victims of the Eala efficacy? Who do you think will be the very first top seed to completely crumble under her relentless psychological pressure next season? If you want to know exactly how the elite top players are desperately scrambling behind closed doors to change their game plans, to stop her, you need to subscribe right now, so you do not miss our next deep dive into the hidden world of tennis strategy.